Good afternoon. I'm Krista Hamilton. I'm the CEO and president of UCAN. Welcome, Mayor, elected officials, foundation executives, clergy, community partners, and friends to our beautiful campus. Almost 2 years ago to today, I was honored to participate in the Mayor's STEP Summit to launch a long-term effort to alleviate poverty and economic hardship in Chicago. What the mayor did not know is that is the exact reason why I do this work. I want to help move families from poverty because I know how it changes the dynamic for generations to come. Professionally, I'm committed to helping families move along the trajectory from surviving to thriving. As a first-generation college student and the first person to actually reach any real success in my family, I know how daunting it is to have to pull everyone up behind you. So when I heard about a comprehensive plan that holds everyone in the city accountable to help people move along that trajectory, it aligned with my personal and professional interests. After leaving UIC in February of 2020, I was pumped, I was ready to roll up my sleeves and get to work, and then COVID happened and everything changed for all of us. But what hasn't changed is UCAN's commitment to the mayor's important initiative. We understand that if we're going to end poverty in a generation, that it's going to take growing quality jobs and boosting income as an imperative for all of us. That pillar of Mayor's STEP plan certainly aligns with UCAN's workforce development efforts. We are laser focused on empowering families to gain financial and social independence. So we are committed to helping the youth and families of North Lawndale and citywide to unlock the power of their potential. I extend my gratitude to Mayor Lightfoot in her bold efforts to create and sustain thriving, safe communities in Chicago. So now I please welcome our Alderman, UCAN's Alderman, Alderman Michael Scott. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Again, Alderman Michael Scott Jr., Alderman here in the 24th Ward. And Christina, I want to thank you for the great work that UCAN does here in the ward. We've been here several times. As a matter of fact, I see a lot of the faces that were here when we announced the fines and fees, something that I have championed and sat on the board for so long to make sure that working families, have a leg up in the city of Chicago and is not saddled by unnecessary debt and burden that the city puts on them. And so I want to thank you guys for being here. I want to thank my colleague, Alderwoman Haddon from 49, and my neighbor, Mike Rodriguez from 22nd, for being here. And I know that they're champions of this work as well. So much, in fact, that, pushing through budgets that reflect the city's values of equity and the STEP program is really important. And so thank you guys for being here today. 2 years ago, Christina talked about this big, bold initiative that the mayor pushed forward. A really bold initiative. I was thinking to myself, like, how do you, as a city that has struggled with this effort for so long, how do you erase poverty within a generation? That is a really tall task. That is something that Martin Luther King talked about when he came to Chicago and right afterwards. And I'm thinking, man, the mayor is thinking really big. I don't know how you get this done. But through that that summit, she laid out a really good blueprint of how do we get this done, right? And then, like Christina said, COVID happened, and it set all of us back. But what it also did is highlighted why we need to do this work even more. It highlighted those people who are struggling. It highlighted communities like North Lawndale, the one that you sit in right now, where we have so many people that are impoverished and have not been resourced for so many years. And so that's why this is so very necessary and so very important to not only the city of Chicago, but specifically communities like mine and Mike Rodriguez's that struggle with this each and every day. And so I want to bring to you somebody who, again, has had this big, giant, bold initiative, somebody who has put the money where their mouth is, with stuff like Invest Southwest and the things that are going on right here in North Lawndale, the mayor of the city of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot.
Good afternoon, everyone. I said earlier, good things always happen when we come to UCAN. So it's a pleasure to be here this afternoon with all of you and to see so many important people here, important because you're doing the people's work. I also acknowledge and thank my colleagues in City Council, Alderwoman Haddon, Alderman Mike Rodriguez, and of course, Alderman Scott, who have been with us all along this journey and understand that the thing that we must do is always reflect the lived experience of real-life people in our work. Today, we mark the 2-year anniversary of our STEP Summit, and we'll be updating you on our shared journey to end generational poverty and our future efforts to free more of our residents from the grip of poverty. Joining me today, aside from Alderman Scott and the other aldermen, are Raul Raimundo, the CEO of the Resurrection Project, who does so many important things throughout Latinx Chicago, but particularly in Little Village. Chicago resident Anwar Shah Khan, Harold Rice Jr., the president and CEO of CEDA, and Audra Wilson, relatively new, president and CEO of the Schreiber Center on Poverty Law. We're also joined in this room by a number of important community and philanthropic partners and aldermen who have worked tirelessly on these efforts over the last 2 years in particular. 2 years ago, I hosted the first ever STEP Summit to kick off a long-term effort to implement evidence-based policies and investments that would alleviate poverty in our city. We know this, that the roots of poverty run deep here, born out of decades of disinvestment in our communities and economic policies that created and entrenched racial and ethnic discrimination, resulting in gaps in health, wealth, and well-being. Let's take stock on the challenges that currently remain for far too many of our poorest residents. Today, 18% of our residents live in poverty, and 44% live just on the edge of poverty, one job loss or one medical emergency away from financial peril. Over 200,000 Chicagoans live in extreme poverty, meaning their income is less than $6,795 a year or $13,875 a year for a family of 4. Those are devastating numbers. Imagine that for a moment, and trying to keep a family of 4 fed, clothed, safe, and healthy on roughly $13,800 a year. It's virtually impossible to do. And we can all agree, I hope, that we cannot be a successful, thriving city until we address the needs of these residents, our neighbors, and use every tool in our toolkit to help lift them out of economic hardship. The STEP Summit was our first step to doing just that, where we laid the foundation for anti-poverty work through 4 pillars of focus. And let me remind you what those 4 pillars are. Reducing the cost of being poor. It's not cost-free. The poor endure more hardships, more financial difficulty simply because they are poor. Pillar 2 is making workplaces fairer and more just. Pillar 3, addressing with diligence and determination the healthcare inequities that became even more dire as a result of the pandemic. And Pillar 4, fostering and increasing community wealth. I'm happy to report that 2 years in to this focus work, and despite a pandemic and historic economic meltdown, we have made bold, significant, and impactful strides to our essential goal of eliminating generational poverty. And our work really falls into 2 broad categories: direct assistance to individuals, and second, breaking down systemic barriers that hold people in the grip of poverty. Let me bring you up to date on what we've been doing over these last 2 years. As a government, we have and continue to take a hard look at our own systemic practices that unfairly burden residents and place undue financial burdens on them. We first turned our eye toward the devastating fines and fees regime that dominated city government, in particular city revenues, for far too long. And here's what we found. For years, successive mayoral administrations, The city of Chicago was crushing residents with debt they simply could not pay, arising from fines and fees, mostly for non-moving violations. The city caused people to lose driver's licenses, driving privileges, lose their vehicles, and drive people into personal bankruptcy, all because they owed debt to the city that they could not pay and frankly was never going to be collected. When I took office, we had debt owed by individuals going back to the 1990s. Imagine that. So we rolled up our sleeves and got to work. First, through the implementation of payment plans and other reforms, we made a pathway to have people pay down their debt based on their own income and ability to pay. We stopped causing people to lose their driver's license and privileges, and we substantially reduced the chances that someone would lose their car because of debt. What we were seeing is that because of the way that the fines kept doubling over and over again, people would say, my car's not worth the $2,000 that I now owe. And they were giving up their vehicles because of what we were doing to them. And what was the effect of these reforms? To date, we have forgiven $11.5 million in city sticker debt alone. And importantly, by eliminating this debt and not taking away driving privileges and vehicles, people can go to work. We have made taxpayers out of residents instead of turning them into scofflaws. And to further reduce the cost of being poor, we created the Utility Billing Relief Program because I know that residents' water debt can be just as burdensome and stressful as credit card or ticket debt. And again, let me take you back to where the way things were. Right before I took office, I learned that the city of Chicago routinely cut people off from access to clean water if they fell behind in making their payments. And I will tell you, I was outraged when I learned of this practice, and immediately, even though I wasn't sworn in yet, called the water commissioner and put an end to those practices. Because I know, and I bet you agree, that water is a basic human right. We can't function without access to water, and we were effectively evicting people from their homes because they couldn't pay their water or sewer bills. So we created this utility billing relief program. And this program provides low-income residents with a 50% reduced rate on their water and sewer bills as an opportunity to have old debts forgiven. And the Utility Billing Relief Program has been very successful. And again, I want to thank CEDA for really helping us make sure that we launch this program successfully. To date, over 18,000 residents have enrolled in the program so far. Over $9 million in debt has been forgiven. And that is the average amount of forgiven debt per household was over $1,000. And again, if you're poor and struggling, $1,000 might as well be $1 million if you don't have the money to be able to pay. This program has not only made a financial impact on our residents' lives, but we made the process to enroll as accessible as possible. One resident, Valerie from Auburn Gresham neighborhood, tells us that she had a wonderful experience working with the city to apply for the program. A city worker helped her explain the program and get her signed up. And through this program, Valerie's water bill was reduced by 50%, and she stands to have her old debt completely wiped away. And we worked on other barriers in city policies that extend to the private sector, including making workplaces and wages fairer and providing pathways to the middle class. This included the Fair Scheduling Ordinance, or the Fair Work Week, which gave predictability to low-income, mostly women of color, who were struggling because they didn't know from day to day whether they were going to be able to work. And imagine trying to manage your cash flow and knowing whether you needed to work your second or third job that week if you didn't know what your schedule was, in many instances, literally till you showed up that day for work. So with the help of the City Council and our friends in organized labor and bringing the private sector to the table, we enacted the most far-reaching fair scheduling ordinance in the country. We increased the minimum wage to $15 an hour, and right now Chicago still remains the only municipality in the state with a $15 minimum wage. We enacted the Shy Biz Strong initiative to protect low-wage workers from wage theft, another huge problem with low-income workers. $15 minimum wage for all domestic workers, including protections and requirements for written contracts with their employers, launching, I think, a very successful Your Home is Somebody's Workplace campaign, which raised the consciousness of these care workers who are doing all kinds of great work in homes, but for low pay, and again, mostly women of color. The Hotel Workers' Right to Return Work Ordinance, and our most recent agreement between our city's airports and SEIU to raise the minimum wage for airport workers to $17 an hour starting July 1. These are some of the systemic changes that we have made as a city government to ease the financial burden on our residents. We've also worked very hard, especially during the height of the pandemic, to get cash directly into the hands of residents who are suffering immediate financial distress. For example, we distributed $637.7 million in affordable housing and emergency rental assistance to over 25,000 struggling tenants and small landlords, preventing a feared wave of evictions. And today we are joined by Anwar Khan, who was a recipient of one such program, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, and he will tell you more about how that program helped him in a time of need. Other direct supports have included emergency food distributions with our partners like the Greater Chicago Food Depository, resulted in 93 million pounds of food distributed in 2020 and another 93 million pounds in 2021. Chicago Connected, which provided free Wi-Fi and broadband to CPS students and their families. 64,000 families and students helped so far. Chicago's Family Forward Fund, which we recently launched in December. This is an $8 million fund, $6 million pledged to date, and 11,800 families served. These are families in CPS that are homeless or housing insecure. We're providing a safety net and a floor for them. We've also been hard at work on reducing health inequities and life expectancy gaps, another chronic challenge for people who are poor or low income. To improve health outcomes for our residents, we launched a Food Equity Council to tackle food insecurity. And we've hired the first ever food equity coordinator in the mayor's office to make sure that within city government and across the private sector, we are doing our part to address this critical need in our city. We created the first maternal morbidity and infant mortality report and pilot to improve infant and maternal health right after birth. And we created health equity zones throughout the city to address health disparities region by region with our local healthcare partners, some of whom are in the room today. And again, I want to thank you for your partnership. And towards tackling another pillar of ours to tackle poverty is building community wealth. I think the greatest example that I can cite is our Invest Southwest program, going into 10 communities, 12 commercial corridors, and to date, 2 years in, through a pandemic and a historic economic meltdown, we have over $1.4 billion in commitments for these communities. That is our goal, to make sure that we're building wealth. And in response to the pandemic, we distributed $115 million in relief to stabilize small and micro businesses and nonprofits. And our NOF fund, our Neighborhood Opportunity Fund, has provided another $20 million in funding to local small business owners so they can continue to grow, hire from the community, and again, lift people up out of poverty. Folks, I'm incredibly proud of all of these efforts. And I have to cite members of our team who have been instrumental, Dan Lori and Skylar Larimore, our chief and deputy chief of policy, Samir Myerkar, our deputy mayor for economic development, Jenny Bennett, our CFO, who does more than just balance the numbers, cares about what happens to people and making sure that we're introducing equitable programs. And of course, Dr. Allison Arwetty and her team at Public Health, who've been phenomenal throughout this pandemic, but have never lost sight on making sure that we close health and equity gaps as well. Now, not one of these programs alone can solve the problems, but they've made measurable steps and improvements in the quality of life of our most vulnerable residents, particularly those at the lower end of the economic scale. So I want to talk to you a little bit about what the future holds, because I'm equally excited about that, and made possible again because of the budget that was passed by City Council last fall that allows us to make $1.2 billion in investments. And again, we're focused on getting cash directly into residents' hands, but also on those broader systemic challenges. We are launching 3 cash assistance programs, one for domestic workers, one for people who were shut out of previous federal aid, and one named the Chicago Resilient Communities Pilot, a $31.5 million monthly cash assistance pilot that we believe will cover 5,000 households with $500 a month for 1 year. If we do this right, it will be the largest, deepest program of its kind in the country. The Chicago Resilient Communities Pilot Program was designed based on the input of an advisory group of experts from across Chicago and, of course, members of City Council, but also stakeholders from across the country, including advocates, researchers, social service providers, and people with personal experience in poverty. And this work is going to be led by the Department of Family and Support Services, led by Brandy Kanazi, our commissioner, who is here and present with us today. Many of the advocates who helped launch this initiative are in the room today, and I'm thankful to each and every one of you. We've also engaged the Inclusive Economy Lab at the University of Chicago to evaluate exactly how this new assistance actually helps families and how the city's departments can take those lessons and apply them for our future social services work. My team is currently reviewing submissions we received from nonprofit organizations applying to be the administrator of this program. The administrator will work under the supervision of DFSS and my policy team to manage the day-to-day work of the program. Once that administrator is on board, residents will be able to apply for the program beginning in April of this year. And today, the city has launched a sign-up form so residents can receive an alert when the application for the pilot goes live. And let me just say, make sure that you visit chicago.gov/cash pilot. That's chicago.gov/cash pilot. And that's how you can sign up to get the alerts ahead of time, and then you'll know when the applications go live. Some requirements. You must live within the city of Chicago, be 18 years of age or older, and you must have experienced an economic hardship related to COVID-19, which pretty much covers every single person living in the city of Chicago. And your household income level must fall at or below 250% of the federal poverty guidelines. That's roughly $57,000 or less for a household of 3. This pilot will advance our equitable economic pandemic recovery and make Chicago part of the national conversation about the impact of cash assistance. Moreover, we'll be leading that conversation because of the city's pilot will be the largest in the country. I'm thrilled to get this program up and running. As my team knows, I'm not a patient person. We need to get checks in the hands of folks as quickly as possible. But cash is a simple and powerful way for governments to support residents who are working hard to regain stability and build a better life for themselves and their families. Now, as I mentioned, on top of this pilot program, this spring, residents will also be able to apply for other one-time cash relief through 2 other programs. The first is a $4.8 million program for domestic workers called the Domestic Worker Relief Fund, giving participants one-time $500 cash relief. A second program, really a third, is a $10.7 million Chicago Resiliency Fund 2.0 for residents excluded from prior rounds of federal stimulus relief, also providing one-time $500 cash relief. We know that some of the relief that came down from CARES and other programs excluded residents that were in need. We would need to make sure that we leave no one behind in providing this cash assistance. Combined, these three cash relief funds will benefit over 30,000 residents who were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic, using a total of $47 million in federal relief funds to invest directly in families and individuals. These initiatives are also funded in part by our $1.2 billion Chicago Recovery Plan. Folks, I just want to say in closing, we have traveled quite a journey in these last 2 years. When we announced and held our STEP Summit 2 years ago, little did we know that in a matter of weeks, the pandemic was going to hit and change all of our lives immeasurably. We're still figuring out where the floor is on many of the things that have affected us over these last 2 years. But a couple things are plain. We have a tremendous opportunity to look historic wrongs in the eye and right those historic wrongs. Yes, some of these issues are large and big and have been decades in the making. But I'm a firm believer that we can create real opportunity and progress out of this moment. We have transformational resources for the first time maybe ever. We have transformational needs and opportunities. Our challenge is, will we work in a transformational way to change the lives of our residents, not just now, but for generations to come? I say yes. I say yes, we can, but importantly, yes, we must work in a transformational way with our partners in the community to make sure that we are meeting the needs of our residents, and so that our recovery, which is already underway, which is very much robust, but we need to make sure that it is inclusive of everyone in every neighborhood who is given the opportunity to fulfill their God-given potential and not let poverty hold them back. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's now my pleasure to bring up Raul Raimundo of the Resurrection Project.
Thank you, Mayor. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. My name is Raul Raimundo. I am the CEO of the Resurrection Project. We are a social impact organization that's rooted in community, headquartered in community, with its mission to build trusting relationships to propel individuals, immigrants, families to achieve their social and economic aspirations, create stable housing, and equitable participation in their community. I am pleased to be here at this anniversary of STEP. I was a participant when it first took place, and my takeaway from that summit was the mayor's bold vision that she put forward for all of us to work together in the community sector, in the private sector, in the philanthropic sector, and yes, in the public government sector. We know that no one sector alone is going to end poverty, but working together across all sectors, we have a chance to address the systemic causes of poverty. For the last 2 years, COVID has shaken the social, economic, political, and personal world of all of us. Pandemic has challenged all of us to redouble our efforts to reduce poverty. No one expected this pandemic when the summit was taking place, and it has challenged us really to double our efforts now. In this time of crisis and uncertainty, the Resurrection Project, the City of Chicago, and many other organizations have risen to these challenges with the expertise, the speed, and the scale to help families prevent further spiral into hardship. In partnership with the City of Chicago, we have been able to launch 2 major initiatives and respond to the social and economic challenges of this pandemic. The first one was the Chicago Resiliency Fund, which provided $1,000 in cash assistance to those families that were not able to receive support from the CARES Act. Together with the city and many partners, we raised almost $10 million to assist close to 40,000 individuals impacted by the loss of income when the pandemic hit. Not an easy feat, but a shared responsibility by all Chicagoans. The second is, and the mayor alluded to this, is the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, which is designed to keep families, renters, and homeowners in their home and avoid the kind of multifamily foreclosures that we saw in the wake of the financial crisis of 2008. As of today, almost $100 million have been deployed to support over 14,000 households with rental and utility assistance, and many more families yet to be assisted. However, the demand for this program is high, and demand for this program is more than the availability of funds for this program. We cannot ignore the grip that COVID has taken over our city and the long history of inequities, racism, and the policies that have exacerbated poverty in our city. Again, I thank the mayor for putting a spotlight on this topic and the policies that you heard this afternoon that she already begun to implement to keep us moving forward together with great resiliency and the solutions that we'll need to continue to address the hardship that many of us Baltimore residents are facing. Thank you for your commitment, Mayor. And now I'm going to introduce, as Mayor mentioned, one of the recipients to share their story of how they've benefited from the Emergency Rental Assistance Program, Anwar Khan.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor Lightfoot, dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anwar Khan. I'm from India, living in Chicago past 30 years, in the West Rogers Park area. And as we all know that we have gone through the hardships after 2020 COVID pandemic, and never imagined that I would almost getting kicked out of my apartment because I've been renting for past 6 years. It was really a hardship I was going through when I get the newsletter from Mayor's office through our social welfare office, ZAMSO, that Mayor Lightfoot has introduced a ERAP Program 1 and ERAP Program 2. That initiative has helped a lot of tenants and a lot of underprivileged families to stay and, and save their homes and families not getting evicted. So I don't feel ashamed of, not approaching the office of Mayor's office, the help which is offered by Mayor, and it does have helped me, save me for a good amount of 6 months of period of time. And I thank you, Mayor Lightfoot, for the very graciously. We'd like to thank you and for taking the initiative for ERAP 1 and ERAP 2 and providing the funds to all the underprivileged families and creating jobs and helping those who are in need. We'd like to really graciously wanted to submit our thanks to you and to your office. Thank you so much.
Oh, these masks. Well, first of all, I want to give my thoughts and prayers to our Ukrainian population here in Chicagoland of what's going on, as many of you already know. Good afternoon. My name is Harold Rice, President and CEO of CEDA, as the mayor said. And thank you, Honorable Mayor Lightfoot, for including me in this STEP anniversary event. On February 20th, you heard the mayor talk about she launched this innovative and aggressive plan, the Solutions Towards Ending Poverty Summit, which I was a part of. And I got to tell you, it moved and it impacted. And out of that, this summit is a catalytic event to advance the work and much more like that will improve the quality of life of residents across Chicago. Prior to the inaugural launch of the STEP Summit, many of you may remember Mayor Lightfoot's passionate statement that water is a basic human right. And in the spring of 2020, the mayor then launched the Utility Billing Relief Program. We call it UBR. It gets to be a tongue twister at times, especially when it's not going right. But to provide low-income residents with a reduced rate on their water and water sewage. Mayor Lightfoot, I want to thank you sincerely for strengthening the bridge of trust and confidence in CEDA to implement the UBR program. And a critical component of the UBR program, of the STEP program, is Pillar 1, which you heard the mayor talk about, which is to reduce expenses and the cost of being poor. As the UBR program enters its third year of successful operation with CEDA, we're happy to announce that within that first year, 93% of UBR enrollees graduated from the program successfully, and we're driving down cost. The mayor has made a significant financial commitment, as she shared with you, and it's generating results. People are not being evicted. People are able to live like human beings, and people are able to, more importantly, use water instead of going without. There's a total of over $11 million in additional past due balances that are eligible for forgiveness. The UBR program began as a 2-year pilot designated to address the mayor's mission, to ensure that Chicago's most vulnerable residents have access to affordable water and wastewater services. The program is proven successful, and we are looking forward to continue our partnership with the City of Chicago as we help protect the water security of Chicago's residents for years to come. I am also honored to have been asked to serve on the historic opportunity with the Chicago Resilient Communities Pilot, as the mayor spoke about, combined with the Department of Family and Support Services. It's just great to know that when you work together, you can accomplish major things when you don't care who gets the credit. And I have to say that working with the city, working with DFSS and the mayor, it's just been a wonderful relationship. So thank you for that opportunity to work with you. One of the goals of the Resilient Communities Monthly Cash Assistance Pilot is to reach over 5,000 low-income Chicagoans through design and implementation who have been hard hit by COVID, as the mayor said, and to support their path to greater economic stability by providing cash assistance of $500 per month. And it will be built out to even be much more than that as we get together and talk as a member. And Mayor, I need to share with you that your lack of patience for this new initiative has been felt and serves as a source of motivation and excitement to get it done and to move from yes, we can to yes, we will. And so I want to thank you and thank all that you're doing in your leadership. So thank you very much. And now I'd like to introduce Audrey.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mayor. Thank you for inviting me. So my name is Audra Wilson, and I'm the president and CEO of the Schreiber Center on Poverty Law. And for over 50 years, the Schreiber Center has fought for economic and racial justice. And the Schreiber has also fought alongside low-wage workers to build a future where all workers have dignity, respect, and power under the law. And I'm really happy to have just a moment to elevate the work of the Schreiber Center in the Protecting Workers Working Group since the beginning of the pandemic, which has been facilitated by our Schreiber attorney, Militza Pagan. And the Schreiber Center has also had the opportunity to work with our partners to secure passage of the Chicago minimum wage and paid sick leave ordinances. And alongside the Illinois Domestic Workers Coalition, helped to pass the Illinois Domestic Workers Bill of Rights in 2016. Now, obviously, we all know that the pandemic has shed light on the critical importance of workers, and especially domestic workers. And just for some statistics, domestic workers include caregivers, childcare providers, and house cleaners that perform their work in our homes. And in the Chicagoland area, 95% of domestic workers are women, 55% are women of color, and 35% are immigrants. These are the workers upon whom our entire society depended during a global health crisis. And that's why providing critical financial relief was essential to keep them safe and supported. So, like the mayor, the Schreiber Center wholeheartedly believes that as the pandemic wanes, we must redirect our focus to recovery and defining with great specificity what that means for every single Chicagoan. That's why it's so important to uplift key provisions of what the mayor had already mentioned with the Chi Business Strong initiative in helping domestic workers. So, for example, with over $400 million in wages stolen from Chicagoland workers by bad faith employers every year, this ordinance now gives the city the ability to protect and recoup stolen wages for its workers. We talked about the raising of the minimum wage, and what that actually does is to send a very clear and strong message that care work is a valued profession and that care workers must be treated with dignity and respect. And the enhanced paid sick leave that covers and clarifies additional uses, such as caring for a family member with a closed school or a place of care, compliance with public health orders, like hopefully not a future pandemic, and mental and behavioral health uses. And of course, the mayor mentioned something that's very important, the Domestic Workers Relief Program, by providing $500 one-time cash payments to domestic workers who have been negatively impacted by COVID-19 pandemic. Finally, much like Harold and some of my other colleagues, the Schreiber Center is very honored to be an advisory group member of the Chicago Resilient Communities Pilot. We all know that a guaranteed income can dramatically reduce poverty and improve families' long-term well-being. And it offers the best chance for people to provide people with resources to make important life decisions, including how to invest in a better future through education or even starting a business, and how to best support their children. And there's no better place to prove this than initiating a pilot in the third largest city in the country with an administration that has been so invested in the long-term health of its residents. So thank you for inviting me to participate today. And now I'm going to turn this back over to you, Mayor.
Before I take questions, I just want to emphasize a couple of points that really resonated with me in listening to the comments from the speakers that are here. These issues that we're talking about, income insecurity, food insecurity, workers' rights, particularly protecting the work of low-wage workers, these are all things that are deeply personal to me because I grew up in a family where we struggled. And my mother was a care worker. My grandma was a care worker. I think I shared with you when we first met that I was fortunate enough to have a CEDA job one summer, clearing vacant lots. And that made a big difference for me in being able to get back to college. So I just want our community partners to understand these are not just niceties for me. They are deeply personal. And my commitment is deep and lasting and profound. I want to change the lives of people in the city for the better. I want to change the lives of black and brown folks, low-wage workers, because I come from that. That's who I am. That's who my people still are. And as mayor, having the privilege of being able to do good things for our residents, there's no greater satisfaction I could possibly get from this job. Regardless of the winds that blow, the slings and arrows that come my way, what keeps me focused, what gives me energy and determination is knowing that people who are growing up in circumstances like mine, some small child, his life is going to be better because of our shared work. That is a powerful motivating force that keeps me fueled every single day. So happy to take your questions now.
Thanks a lot, Mayor. We'll start off with Amy Jacobson, 560 AM.
Okay, go you.
Craig Delmore.
Okay, and thank you, Amy. Mayor, one on topic and two quick off topic.
Sure.
The on topic is having this all under one umbrella, having it be part of a comprehensive plan. What is different than if the city were doing these things and the partners were doing these things individually? Is it more about keeping track of what's going on? Is more getting done? What's the difference for this plan?
Well, I think there's a profound difference, and the difference is this. When we work in silos, we never get the kind of innovation and energy that we would get if we were working collaboratively. If there is more of a 360 vision across not only city government, but in conjunction with our partners, again, there are going to be many, many lessons that we will unpack from our learning of COVID, but one of the most important ones is when we break out of silos, when we communicate and collaborate with each other, where we have the ability to partner with community, and the community understands what they're doing, what we are doing, where we see the gaps, but we also see the opportunities, we are more effective at delivering services to our residents who are most in need. So having this as a comprehensive plan that we are focused on with our 4 pillars keeps us accountable to each other, but more importantly, make sure that we are really focused, even through a pandemic, on delivering for our residents. I think it has made measurable difference because we came together, we made this commitment, and we're working as a team across the entire city and really doing our part from where we sit, but also building these collaborations that we've never seen maybe before ever, but certainly that have served us profoundly well in this time of need. You know, I look out at this audience and looking at the people who are here, some of whom knew each other before, but maybe only in passing, some of who didn't know each other, making sure that we get different perspectives. That's really important, and that's why I think having this under one umbrella makes us focus better as a city government, but I think it makes us more collaborative with our community partners.
Okay, now, the big question of the day, 24 hours after the City Council voted affirmed its support of the independence and the sovereignty of Ukraine. What are your feelings and what has transpired since?
Well, and thank you for teeing that up. Look, when I got home last night and I started to see the news accounts that Putin had gone forward with his acts of aggression against the country of Ukraine, simply because they aspire to be free and to be a democratic country and align themselves with other countries who have the same aspirations for their residents. I felt heartsick. You know, I'm old enough that I've seen war over many years, particularly in these last 20, 30 years. There was a part of me that had hoped that this was a bluff and that he would take the many exit ramps that had been given to him by the United States and our European allies. But I think what this act shows is he's a ruthless killer, and he doesn't care about the harm that he is doing to innocents in the Ukraine and the surrounding territory. I'm proud of the fact that the president has stepped up in this time. I'm proud that he's rallied our European allies to respond and choke off the economic livelihood. I hope it's enough. I fear it's not. But fundamentally, we have to stand up as a country that believes in freedom and democracy and call out acts of aggression like this wherever it happens, anywhere in the globe. And we have a particularly, I think, responsibility as a city, which is why I was proud to sponsor the resolution that was passed by City Council, because we have a substantial Ukrainian population here in the city of Chicago. Whether immigrants or whether by ancestry, we've got to stand in solidarity with our neighbors, our friends, our sisters, our brothers in this critical time, and keep supporting the voices across the world that are condemning the Russians, but also standing ready to provide additional support to the Ukrainian people, because they will need it. They will need it. And I hope that the condemnation will will somehow prick the consciousness of Putin. But I've watched the senseless and false rhetoric that has been part of the buildup and accusing the Ukrainian people of threatening the territorial sovereignty of Russia, which is a joke and a lie, threatening the sovereignty of the regions that Putin already invaded and took from Ukraine. Clearly, this man is diabolical in his thinking and his actions, and I just pray for the health and safety of the Ukrainian people in this very dark time.
Amy Jacobs.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, Mayor. A number of restaurant owners have been, they tell us they've been devastated because of these mandates. They've asked, Senators Duckworth, Senators Durbin for more federal help. Are you willing to petition President Biden for more bailout funding for restaurants?
Well, I don't consider it bailout. I think the restaurant and bar industry in our city and really across the country have been devastated by COVID shutdowns. And we have provided substantial financial support to this industry because of the devastation that they've had to endure in our effort to save people's lives from the spread of the vaccine. I've been a champion of additional federal resources and supported the efforts of the Restaurant Association and independent restaurants in their efforts to win more support, not a bailout, but more support from the federal government because of the hardships that they've had to endure. And look, I've said this many times, there have not been easy decisions that we've had to make over these last 2 years in the course of the pandemic. And it's never an easy decision when you know that you are doing something that threatens the economic health and well-being of a business, particularly these small business owners, these restaurateurs. The big guys are going to be fine, but what I worry about is the mom and pop neighborhood restaurants who put everything that they have into starting these businesses and have endured the most difficult of time. Being in the restaurant business, even in a good economic time, is always difficult. This has not been the kind of environment that anyone would wish on a budding entrepreneur, particularly one in the restaurant and bar industry. So yes, I have and will continue to fight for additional federal funds for them.
This came to us from CWB Chicago. Internal Affairs Chief Yolanda Talley, I'm sure you've heard, her niece was caught in her car, pulled over, her boyfriend or her male companion in the car throwing out bags of heroin. Turns out he's also the informant in the Anjanette Young case. What do you think should happen to her, and do you think she has compromised her position?
Well, I addressed this yesterday, but I'll say it again. Really, there's two pieces, I think, to your question. Number one, in my experience with Yolanda Talley, she's exactly the kind of police leader that we need. She's competent, she's tough, and she gets the job done. And I am not aware of any information that would suggest that she was any way involved or not. And I'm frankly disappointed at the coverage that suggests that somehow she was directly involved in what her niece apparently got herself into. That I've not been presented with any evidence that suggests that, with the caveat that obviously the Inspector General's office is engaged in an ongoing investigation. But I'll say this as well. Women in leadership, particularly women of color in leadership, always face a daunting challenge. Yes, doors have been opened for us, but we've been invited into institutions that were made by and for men. And we are not leading, in many instances, organizations that were shaped by the experience of people other than white men. So it's challenging to be a woman in leadership, as I can tell you firsthand, particularly as a woman of color. And how does she get her reputation back from the innuendo, which I believe will probably be proven to be false, that she had something to do with this? Look, as I step back, and I mentioned before, part of the reason why this work is so important to me is because the life that I came from, but the life that many of my family members still lead. And as somebody who's been very fortunate and blessed over the course of my life to have resources I never knew were even possible for somebody like me, yes, of course, I help my family members who are less fortunate than I am. And I would hate to see an act of kindness be turned into something that it's not. The other thing I'll say is this. I'm not going to validate, because I don't know whether or not the individual who threw the bags of heroin out of the car, in fact, was a confidential informant. But I will say this, as a former federal prosecutor, it is dangerous to be playing games of leaking the names and identity of confidential informants. These individuals are a fact of life in law enforcement, and many of them put their lives on the line by providing information to law enforcement. And I've seen firsthand what happens when their identities are compromised. We live in difficult times. We live among treacherous people. And when their identities are compromised, it literally can lead to death. So whoever is perpetuating this and leaking information, I hope that the Inspector General's investigation covers that as well, because you're playing with somebody's life. It's not a nothing. It's not the kind of vanilla stuff that gets leaked all the time. This is somebody's life. And we can't afford to set the precedent where people who come forward to support the efforts of law enforcement are thereby put in harm's way more than they already are, because we mishandle the confidentiality of their identity and the information that they provide. And I've said this to the superintendent. I want to know who leaked that, and I want them held accountable.
But the information he gave was wrong. I mean,
I'm sorry?
the information that the informant gave was wrong. That's,
No, but that's not the point. What you've just said to me, and I've been asked the same question now 2 days in running, is this guy was a CI. And yes, maybe he's connected with Angela Young. I don't know. But the point is, a confidential source is supposed to be confidential. That's the whole point. They're not supposed to be compromised. Identity is not supposed to be leaked. And the fact that this is reverberating across the press as if it's nothing, I'm trying to impress upon you, this is serious business. And it shouldn't have been leaked. It should never have been confirmed. It should never have been told, because when you do that, you compromise the entire system. And we rely upon people to be able to come forward to us anonymously to help us fight crime in neighborhoods that are overrun by violence. And if they can't trust how we handle this information because someone leaks their identity, that's a serious problem. And it undermines our ability to provide safety in communities.
Thanks a lot, Mayor. That's a wrap, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
and Spotify.
Do you know a loved one who stopped working at the start of COVID and is now refusing to return to the workplace? If you want my advice, log on to drphil.com and tell me more.
Are you ready? Here we go.
Right now, there's hope, but if the bed and breakfast doesn't work, then that's that.
That's fear of failure. My dad was worried about me becoming a storyteller, worried that I would fail like he did. You can do this.
What was that?
It's a ghost feather, so it kind of just zaps right back into place, but symbolically, it's yours.
Ghosts returns new tonight on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.